Toronto saw, a big dip, 11%. But again, I'm going to show you something in a second, which I think helps to kind of justify it a little bit. And then York region came down about 2.5%. So overall, Halton, Peel, and York, like, they're drops, but they're not that drastic on a month-over-month basis. You know,
does any of this really surprise you?
No, not really. I mean, I think the Toronto thing looks bad on paper, but I think it looks really bad. It's great for headlines, but I think there's more components that go into it that people don't take into consideration. They only look at the price point, but then you have to say, okay, prices are going down. Do I think they're going down this drastically? There's motivated sellers out there, but I think there's a whole picture that we have to take into consideration, which I'm hoping to paint throughout this presentation, right?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Channel. You get me, Zack Brittain with Brittain Real Estate Hosting, and we have Emma Pace on the channel today, the condo queen in Toronto, the team leader, the dog mom, the investor extraordinaire, the everything woman, Emma Pace in the flesh. If you don't know her, you are in for a real treat. Emma, what's going on today?
Man, that might be the hypest intro ever.
I didn't even yell that much. I'm excited.
I feel like I should be running out somewhere and like screaming and shouting. Thank you.
I'm ready to run through a wall too.
I'm pumped now.
If you guys don't know Emma, how do they find you? If you're brand new to the channel, who are you? How do they find you? How do we get connected right off the bat?
Yeah, so right off the hop, if you want to connect with me, the best way is via Instagram. Pace of Base is my handle there. So if you want to connect with me, send me a DM. I will get back to everybody. It's just a matter of time. But I will get back to you if you send me a message if there's anything you've got questions about from the presentation.
Great follow, by the way. I have been a follower for over a year now before we even really got connected through Canadian Real Estate Channel.
Thanks,
super practical. I love the real talk. I like that.
Yeah, I have a pretty no BS approach to things. I don't know. Like, what you get on Instagram truly is like the authentic me. I'm not like trying to pump a different type of lifestyle or anything like that. It is what it is.
A real realtor, God forbid. Exactly. So today, what are we going to go through for the rest of the presentation, the video? What are our viewers going to get?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm going to go through two things that our network has been finding really effective. That's been, just a little bit more of like a finger on the pulse approach to being able to kind of keep tabs on what's happening in the market. So awesome. I'll kind of go through both of those things, and then we will go through the month-over-month and year-over-year data in each segment of the Toronto market. So condos, condo towns, semis, and then detached. And then I will show you guys how Toronto is performing in comparison to the rest of the kind of major suburban markets in the GTA. So Halton, Durham, Peel, and York. And then we will talk about some important metrics, such as months of inventory, that kind of thing. Then we will talk specifically about the condo market, and then we will pair that with how the rental market is helping the condo market, or maybe not helping the condo market. You'll find out if you stay tuned. And then at the end, I will wrap it up with some key considerations that you should probably think about if you are looking to make a move, given what we project could potentially happen over the next couple months.
Okay, so if we're a buyer, if we're a seller, if we're currently a homeowner in the Toronto market, we're going to get deep on everything they need to know, as well as maybe for any of the investors or the buyers out there that need kind of a little bit of that extra info, how to get connected with you. So let's dive right into it.
If you're a data person, I think you'll like the presentation for sure, because I pretty deep on the data. I like to make all of my decisions based on data. I know, what they'll typically say is people will buy with emotion and they'll justify with logic.
Yep.
I try to be as logical as I possibly can, and then still do things with emotion. Like, I just randomly still do that. So I try to bring all the data possible to make the most informed decision. And then when I'm super excited or pumped about something, I still do it anyways.
There we go. So let's get into the goods. What are we starting with here?
Cool. So, first and foremost, these two lists are what our network has been finding the most valuable. So,
Wicked.
if anybody's an investor, you don't necessarily have to be an investor. I'm going to break down kind of the two lists that we're sending out weekly. So, we're sending an investment condo of the week out to anybody that wants to be on this particular list, right? And so, what this will do is it'll give you a better approach weekly of what the numbers are really looking like for condos in Toronto, right? So, sometimes they'll be in downtown, sometimes they'll be in alternative locations like Scarborough Town Center, that kind of thing. Now, I do have to preface this by saying the best deals go to our signed clients. All right. So if oftentimes what we're doing is analyzing these deals for our clients, and then if they're passed over, and these are kind of like they're good options to give you an idea of what's going on in the market, but it might not be the best deal that we find. It'll be one of the better deals, but the best deals will go to the people that are our clients. So I just want to preface and say that, which I think is understandable.
Yeah. So you want the best deals, work with the best agents. They got the inventory, they got the product. Get connected.
And look, I think one of the biggest challenges that people find from an investment standpoint is like it's extremely labor intensive. Like you can have systems and processes and kind of like rules of thumb set up, but if you want to find the best deals, like you have to do the work. And so
they don't just fall out of trees. There's
not
so much inventory. They just grow.
Are like, hey, can you just send us some deals? And it's like, well, if you want the time investment from somebody, you also have to show you got to meet them halfway there. So we do a lot of deal analysis for our clients. And then what we'll usually do is find one of the best deals and say, hey, look, just to kind of give anybody that's just kind of browsing or, even if you're working with another agent, whatever happens to be, here are some just kind of general rules of thumb for how the market's performing and what the numbers kind of look like for investment condos.
That's awesome. Great way to get an initial look and even potentially scoop up an awesome deal.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you like them, buy them for sure. The second is not necessarily only for investors. A lot of our investors that are on the condo thing are also on the motivated sellers list as well.
Okay.
But the motivated sellers list is for anybody. It could be an end user as well. But we basically send out a list every 2 weeks with links for both condo and freehold properties of everybody in the GTA who is a motivated seller, who's basically put their hand up to say, hey, I'm down to take a little bit of a haircut off of list price, right? And so we send that out, and where we found this to be effective is I think a lot of people, from a psychological perspective, will set a threshold from like a budgetary perspective on Realtor.ca or whatever site they're actually searching for, right? And so this kind of opens up the scope for, hey, my budget's 800. This thing's listed at 850, 860, but I know this guy is willing to come down a little bit on his price. This guy or girl is willing to come down a little bit on this price. So if you're actually interested in that property, it kind of pre-qualifies ones that you could maybe look a little bit above budget that we might be able to negotiate in your budget. And so it's just a really easy way to qualify potential deals without having to do much work. Like we'll just send them to you.
Again, a ton of value. I mean, fairly straightforward for you and your team to do, because I mean, like, this is what you do full time.
Yeah, exactly.
But just a quick and dirty look at some either, the one condo that you think is the sweetest deal, and then a short list of maybe people that you can say, hey, maybe a little bit of room here to get something done.
Yeah.
Let's check those out. That's awesome. So how do people get connected with the list?
Yeah. So if you guys want to be on the list, send an email to admin@Monstera. My administrator will make sure that you're manually added. And all that we ask is like, just set your name, email address, the subject line is add me to the list, and then just let us know. You don't have to send a massive email or anything. Just say like, I want to be on the condo thing, or I want to be on the motivated sellers list, and we'll add you to that.
That's awesome. And then boom, they're getting emails directly to their inbox.
Yeah, exactly.
Technology. That's fantastic.
Simple, easy. And we've been getting a lot of really good feedback on it. So I just wanted to make sure I appreciate anybody, I know there's some regular viewers on here, and I just appreciate you guys checking it out. So if you guys want, get on the list. Like, why not?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's get into the nerd stuff.
Oh, let's nerd out on real estate.
Cool. Let's do it. All right. So I always like to go over the year-over-year and month-over-month market performance.
Absolutely. Helps you gain perspective on kind of where we're really at.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just look at the year over year stuff and it just doesn't tell the whole story, right?
Definitely.
So if I was just to show you this, and so this white graph is Zoocasa's data. So if we look, year over year, detached prices are actually down 7%. But if we looked at the rest of, semis, condos, and condo town, and apartment style, you look and be like, okay, well, the market's still doing really well. Like we're up, 5 to 8%, like not terrible.
Decent year.
Yeah, it's an okay year. Like it's actually average in comparison to, looking at the last 40, 50 years worth of data. But I think, if you're just keeping like a very light touch point on the market, it's whatever. Just you can look at this. If you're somebody who's actively looking at potentially getting to the market in the next 12 months, or you're in the market now and you want to keep your finger on the pulse maybe a little bit more, then I think looking at the month over month data every month is really important. And I've been doing this for 19 months, I think, on the channel or something like that. Like it's been a while,
awesome.
right?
So just to cut in real quick, Emma,
yeah.
I think it's really important to touch on that is like for your network or for your clients that they're getting this stuff because they're talking to you, they're talking to your team, like you and your team are meeting on this stuff. Like this is what you guys do, right? Yeah. So understand if people are being active or they just want to nerd out on real estate because they have holdings or they want to get in the market or they want to explore Toronto, like they can get access to this stuff through you and your team directly.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, the biggest thing that I've learned in business is that leverage is one of the most important things to help you get ahead, right? And so you might look at this and be like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
I literally don't know what these numbers mean. So just leverage us because this is what we do. This is what we're interested in. So allow us to be that lever to get you further ahead without you having to do the work. Like I'm doing the work anyways.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So let's look at the segments of the market. All right. So condo prices went down about 3.25% last month. So we were at 771. They've dropped down to 744. So we'll say about 750 for a condo if you want to buy in Toronto. This is Toronto proper too. This isn't all of Treb, so it doesn't take into consideration like the suburban markets. This is proper Toronto.
Good clarification. I feel like a lot of the regular listeners and a lot of people are like, yeah, Toronto kind of, Mississauga's part of that.
Like it's part of Treb, the real estate board. It's
not Toronto proper.
Yeah, I mean,
this
it would skew the numbers. This is Toronto, like city of Toronto.
Okay.
416. So if we look at condo towns, we were actually testing that 900K threshold for a long time. Like this entire year, we were basically bouncing between 900 and like 975. So it was like ping pong back and forth. That number. We have finally this month breached that threshold to the downside by actually a fairly significant amount. So we basically went from like 910 to 850. Really, right? So we saw about a 6% price decrease. Now, another important thing we're going to kind of get into this is volume also plays a drastic. I think a lot of people just look at prices and they don't take into consideration volume. Condo townhouses, we typically do not have a lot of volume in terms of transactions. They're one of the more rarer segments of the market, right? Like there's tons of condos that sell and there's lots of detached properties that sell, but there is only so many condo townhouses. Okay. And so if you don't have a lot of volume, then it's much easier for the numbers to be skewed. And so you have to look at this number over a longer period of time because there's just not as many data points, right? So if there's 50 condo townhouses that sell and they randomly all sell at 600K, because there's just a smaller segment of that market that's going to pull the number down. So important to consider because when we look into like total trades and volume, it's down quite a bit right now.
Okay.
Right? So semis, we saw we're at basically 1.34 and we moved 5% to the downside. So you're looking at basically 2.5 to get into a semi in Toronto now. Okay. Now at the peak of the market, we were looking closer to 1.5. Right. Yeah. So where I think it becomes interesting is when we look at detached, you're like, oh, wow, that's a big move to the downside of 12%, 1.73 to 1.5. Right. So right now, you can buy a detached property in Toronto for what you would have otherwise paid for a semi earlier this year.
Wow.
Fully detached. Right. Wow. And I know it's like, everybody's dream is how can I get a detached property in Toronto proper because they're really expensive and hard to come by.
Yep.
But from a price reduction perspective, we've basically seen, that top of the market pull off to where people were people were paying the same price for semis earlier this year.
Well, in Toronto is such a unique market. Like you do have a lot more factors and variables that are much more unique to Toronto compared to, small to mid-sized markets in Ontario and the rest of Canada. Right.
Yeah.
It is a totally different beast, but I noticed the detached price points have, like, on a percentage basis, have decreased much more dramatically, than any of the other market segments. What's kind of the explanation for that?
I think it's just price point, price point solely, right? Is, we were over $2 million. When you think about carrying costs with rate increases on $2 million versus $750, there's a pretty drastic difference in terms of carrying costs.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's played the biggest, that's probably the biggest component to it. And I think, what I've seen here, and because if you look, like, detached prices have decreased basically twice as much as the next closest, which is condo towns. Right. And so I saw this, I'm seeing this now. And I saw it as well when we introduced the stress test, when we had the foreign buyers tax that came in. Right.
Yep.
And so what I usually find, and I'm not sure if you saw this in your market as well, Zach, but I definitely see this in Toronto, is everybody moves down a bucket. That's what I like to say. Right.
Yep.
So
100%.
The guys who were looking at detached are now looking at semis. The semi guys are now looking at condo towns. The condo town guys are now in the condo segment. And then the people who were just kind of scraping to get into the market are out of the market. Everybody just kind of moves down a bucket. Right. And so what I've seen, and you'll look at this with rents as well, because rents have gone up so drastically. You have the people who are like, hey, maybe I'll buy a semi or a detached. And then you're like, I'm not going to buy a semi or detached anymore because the carrying costs have gone up so drastically given the overall purchase price.
Okay.
And then they're like, should I rent for the year? And then they look at rents and they're like, I also don't want to rent because that's not, it's kind of a losing proposition one way or the other. So then the next best option is, okay, I still want to own something. I don't think people's desire to own a home has changed as a result of this. There's just fear in the marketplace. So then a good alternative is for them to probably stay somewhere in this condo territory, including condo towns. But again, this is probably somewhat skewed just given volume. But you go, okay, I'm not going to buy my absolute dream thing. I'm also not going to go back to renting. So a good happy medium for me would be to just enter the condo market. And so I think that's why we're actually seeing the most stability in the condo market, is because it's kind of getting squeezed from a rents perspective and from other people that were looking for something different that have now considered that as an alternative.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's look at the other regions in the GTA and how they're performing.
The other ones.
The other ones. Yeah, exactly. So Durham actually moved down to an average price point of $900K. And I'm going to show you in a second what peak prices are to now. But average price for Durham is about $900K. We saw about a 7% drop. Peel basically went from 1.1 to, it came down by 3%. So we'll say 1.1 to like $1.5 million essentially.
And this is across all property segments.
Yeah, exactly. This is composite.
Overall
So
market averages.
Consideration, everything, condo, townhouses. I didn't separate them here. That would probably make this another.
Yeah, it's going to take forever just to get general perspective, though. This is great. Yeah.
So Halton has performed relatively well. We're basically staying pretty tight there around 1.25. Toronto saw, a big dip, 11%. But again, I'm going to show you something in a second, which I think helps to kind of justify it a little bit. And then York region came down about 2.5%. So overall, Halton, Peel, and York, like, they're drops, but they're not that drastic on a month-over-month basis.
Does any of this really surprise you?
No, not really. I mean, I think the Toronto thing looks bad on paper, but I think it looks really bad. It's great for headlines, but I think there's more components that go into it that people don't take into consideration. They only look at the price point, but then you have to say, okay, prices are going down. Do I think they're going down this drastically? There's motivated sellers out there, but I think there's a whole picture that we have to take into consideration, which I'm hoping to paint throughout this presentation, right?
Wow, and not just a realtor, a painter as well. I love this.
Exactly.
Paint us the picture,
Bob Ross of real estate. I like it. So this is something that I think plays into that picture, which is the share of $2 million sales And you can see that we're basically
12%.
We were at 12% of the overall market selling at that price point, and now we've come down. And so you have to say, again, and I don't have all the variables again here, but it's like, you just are the people that were listing at 6 million just not listing anymore, because you're going to see that volume's gone down and a lot of sellers have taken their houses off the market.
Yep.
So this is what I'm talking about with volume. If you had, 15 or 26, 7, $8 million listings, that would be propping up the overall average price point. If those guys take their houses off the market, then that lowers the average price point, which could skew and make things look worse than they are, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, it seems like you're digging into the different segments and then the different price points within the segments to understand, okay, is there just either something that is an anomaly? Is there something that's missing? Or is this a legitimate trend that is actually going to be skewing the data? Because the everyday buyer or investor who's maybe, not super experienced, they may consider some of these items, but at the same time, they're not going to necessarily have the resources or the expertise to actually sift through all this data. So this is incredible.
No, and I think like a genuine concern for most people is like, hey, I still want to do this, but I don't want to overpay. Like if I was a consumer right now, my biggest fear would be overpaying in a down market.
Yeah. Well, you and your team work with buyers, sellers, and investors all the time. That's literally the number one concern, probably since you've ever been in the business, is I just don't want to overpay. I don't want to get screwed.
Totally. And I think, if we say the average condo townhouse price is $850 now, and you go in and you find something that's $925, how do you know if you're overpaying or not? You may or may not be overpaying. So we really got to dive into all of the layers here that come into this final component to determine, are you actually overpaying or not? Because if you paid $925 and the average price point is $850, you're going to feel like you're overpaying, when really maybe you're still getting a great deal. We just have to look at the bigger picture, right?
Yeah, it's relative. That's 100%. The great advice for any buyers that are looking out there, like price is relative.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, this is kind of where we're at from peak to current price.
Awesome.
So Durham peak price was 1.234, right? So basically, you're buying a semi in Toronto now for the price that you were likely paying in Durham at the top of the market for average price point, right?
Okay.
So we've seen a 27% price reduction from peak to current. And this is, again, composite, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Peel has come down, and we tested that 20, again, I know you and I were talking before about, the number of calls we do, but my team does a lot of calls. Like we're on the phone a lot, and most people would say when the market drops by 20%, let me know. That's an enticing enough number for me to like hop back in. Right. And so last month we saw Durham, I think it was like 19% or 19 and 20%. Like it hovered around that 20. So then I was like, oh,
I'm calling these people.
I was like, is this it? Like, is this a thing everybody's been saying? Like, it actually hovered the 1 month that it kind of got close, and then we just broke that threshold. So it didn't work out. I guess what people are saying is it hasn't caught up yet.
Oh, that's funny.
So we're starting to test that 20% reduction in both Peel and Halton as well. So Peel went from 1.3 to, again, like $1,066,000. Halton went from 1.5 to 1.2. And then Toronto, and again, Toronto is going to be, and this looks bad, but Toronto is going to be more comprised of condos than any of these. So therefore, this, if we're not seeing as many detached homes for sale, if we're not seeing as much volume on the larger price point, and then you have a lot of condo activity that still continues to happen, that's going to inevitably pull the average price point down more, because you have more volume happening at a lower price point.
At the lower price point types of properties, yeah. Well, and before we move on, I mean, this is really good context for any of the viewers out there that have no idea what's going on in the market, as well as those that have been tracking or working with your team or on any of your email lists. But take me through like I know even people that I grew up with, they only move to Toronto for school or work. You get your first condo, maybe you get your first investment property, you keep one of the condos and you live in the other. Really common scenario for a lot of people that are still living in Toronto and want to be there.
Yeah.
For those people that may be owning a condo or own a property in Toronto and are considering moving out of the city to one of these other regions, where has you and your team really seen kind of maybe value in a detached or a semi-detached that wasn't really quite as attractive, 6-12 months ago?
Honestly, I would have to say first thing is Durham, and I'll tell you why. Because if you look at the average price point for everything else but Durham, it starts with with a million, right? And so as a result, that automatically sets the threshold for a much higher down payment because you're going to have 20% to get into any of these markets from an average price point perspective. So immediately, if you're capital restricted, then I would automatically go to Durham because you would be able to buy a detached property in Durham with 10% down now.
Yeah. And are you finding that's a common move?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be very honest, there's actually quite a few buyers that still have 20% down. And so what I'm actually seeing more common than not, and with the clients that we work with, like for me specifically, I run a full team. And so we've got kind of specialists in each different area, first time buyers, investors, all that kind of stuff. I deal a lot with upsizers, right? And so that would be someone who owns a condo downtown, maybe's outgrown it. And again, this is just a lot of
generalizations here.
Yeah, and it's a result of the business that I had earlier in my career where I was dealing with condo buyers for the most part. And so I deal a lot with people who are selling their condo and making this exact move that you're asking about. And what I've noticed recently is more of them are trying to figure out, how can I stay in Toronto? Because this is it's my one opportunity maybe that has presented itself that I haven't had before. For me, I thought I was going to sell my condo and go really far. And now it's, we've got clients right now that are looking to put their property on the market. We're probably going to end up selling it around, we'll say 1.1 to 1.2. And they're looking at upsizing in a much better location, getting an extra bedroom, parking, all of that kind of stuff. So like a significantly better house for their future family. And it's going to be like $100,000 difference.
Yeah.
So they're like, let's just do that now because we have never been able to do that before, right?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a common move in your market. I know in Waterloo region where I'm at, that's a very common move over the last 6 to 12 months and is going to be for the next 6 to 12 months, I think, as well.
Yeah, right? I mean, it makes sense. If you're selling a condo at and we can look at this right now because I have the peak to current.
Oh, beautiful.
So here's the thing, right? With people who are looking to sell a condo, when their average price point was $822 and it's come down to $740, you've got 9% that you take off the top where you're like, that sucks. Like I lose 9%. Yep. But now I want to go buy detached and I'm saving whatever that's going to be 16% because I'm losing the 10 here. And that's obviously not exact math, but close. I'm losing, I'm gaining a lot more on the trade up. And I think that's where people are finding value. Like, yes, I'm losing some money here, but I'm gaining way more down here because
that gap is downside. Getting a little bit smaller, right? 26% off 2 million is way more value that you can scoop up as a potential buyer as opposed to 9.5% off the 822. That's awesome. Yeah. That's great value.
It honestly is if you're in it for the long term. And that's what I tell everybody. I'm like, if you want to do this and you want to sell your house in 6 to 20 months, like just don't do it. Whatever. I wouldn't be the right person for you because I think that there's too much volatility and there's too many, again, additional variables that are outside of our control and other people's control with what could happen in the market. But if you're moving with your family for the next 25 years and you're in an unreal school district that you couldn't have got in before and you're near the beach or whatever it happens to be, I feel fairly confident that in 15 years from now, we'll probably pass the top that we have already reached at some point. Like, I feel good about that.
I'm not a betting man. Actually, I lied. I am a betting man, and I would bet that's the case.
Yeah, totally. So I think it's a pretty safe bet long term. It's just, I mean, not to be too cliche, but like if I had a crystal ball, I'd be a lot richer than I am today. You know what I mean? And I don't have one. I wish I did. But this is the move that we're seeing a lot of people make right now. Yeah. And I think to the flip side of that, with people who are potentially looking to downsize, which we don't typically deal a lot with downsizers. We have, but it's not like millennial upsizers is like our specific niche that we deal with. But you got to look at it this way too. Like if you can hold on to your house and not sell at this 20%, 26% drop to only save 10 here, it goes against you the other way. So people ask me like, hey, like my parents were thinking about downsizing. I'm like, if it were me and I had the opportunity to get them to hold on a little longer, I probably just wouldn't do it because the numbers work the opposite way if you go down.
Yeah. Fair advice, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about the important metrics. So this is where I think things get really interesting is you and I had talked about your market like more showing activity and like more availability for listings than you've seen before and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
We're seeing something where over, from July until August, we've actually seen a bit of a dip in terms of, and sorry, this blue is a resale residential listings and the green is the rental market, just for clarity. We're actually seeing this drop, right? So you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like I would expect if we're in a bit of a buyer's market that we'd have a pile up of inventory.
Absolutely.
Right. But we have seen a lot of people who had listed their properties March, April, May. They have a 90-day contract. So those 90-day contracts have either recently expired or are coming up for expiration, right? Typically, when you sell your house, it's a 90-day contract that you have with the brokerage. And unemployment is still extremely low. Therefore, people still have the income to substantiate the monthly payments to keep the house and not sell it at a discount. And therefore, when your expectation was, I listed my house in April with February peak pricing, like we just talked about, like, hey, I listed my house with the expectation I'm getting 1.4, and now your house is worth 1.2, then people are like, I'm just not going to sell at 1.2.
I don't need it that bad.
Yeah,
that could
I'm
be
just
maybe
going to
your
take the house off the
downsizer, right?
market. So I think a lot of people have this impression, especially from, how the media has presented things, that people are in like this panic mode to like get rid of their properties and they have to sell at a discount and blah, blah, blah. And that's just not really the case, because I don't know anyone personally that has lost their job as of yet. And I don't know if that's going to happen going forward. But at this point, that isn't what we've seen. And so we have more sellers that have removed their property off the market as a result of not being pressured to sell. They don't feel the pressure to actually get rid of it. So we have less available inventory and we still have suppressed demand. And as a result, that is low volume, which could skew the numbers, which is what we talked about before.
Yeah, but talk to me about this rental market though too. It looks like our rental inventory, I mean, it creeped back up the last couple of weeks, but not enough to really make that big of a dent.
Really low. So I'm going to show you some numbers, because there's one segment. There's so many segments of the rental market that I try to choose one very specific niche thing and I've been following it for 18 months, right? Just so I can have accurate numbers on that that segment of the market. So I'll show you that at the end. But the rental market is like, I've never seen anything like it. People are doing offer presentations for rentals now.
What?
Like formally offer presentation to be conducted this day for a rental. That's how much demand there is in the rental market, because again, like I said before, some of the people go from detached to condos. The people that were looking for semis are freaking out going, should I not buy? Then everybody hops back into the rental market. There's an extreme amount of demand. It drives up rental prices. And then you go, is it actually cheaper for me to rent? I don't know, because what would have cost you $2,200 5 months ago is now $2,800. And it might only cost you $3,200 to own the thing. So you go for an extra $400 or $500 a month. I know rates are up, but prices are down. Should I just buy it? I don't know. It's for you to determine.
Food for thought. I mean, crazy. So, quick and dirty. You got a true 1-bedroom in the heart of the city. What are we renting it for, give or take, with a parking spot? Because you got to have the Benz somewhere.
You're probably looking at like $2,350 to $2,450 right now.
Okay. And like easy. That's like,
yeah, but we were talking peak COVID, like 1,700.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So
all that COVID inventory is gone. That's see you later.
So the COVID discount is over. And I think a really good way to understand this market, because one day we're going to look back on this. It's hard to tell when you're in the moment, but one day we're going to look back and this rate hike discount will also be over at some point, right? I don't know when it's going to be, but it will be over. So now everybody's like, oh man, those COVID prices, those COVID rental prices were amazing. Like imagine if you could get it's like, they're gone. Like they're gone now. Right. And so you have this window of opportunity, which I don't know how long this window is going to be open, but it's here for you to buy prices at a suppressed, buy properties at a suppressed price as a result of these other variables. At some point in time, the COVID rental discount will no longer be here for the interest rate discount on prices. It just is what it is. Right. Yeah. So to kind of give you an idea of where we're at. And again, I know it's the same thing with you, where a special property with unique features in a great neighborhood, those things are still selling quickly. For the most part, we're in a buyer's market for the most part. And I like to present both of these together because and for anybody that wants data, this guy here is Zealand. He's on Twitter. Unbelievable. Like, incredible guy. So if you ever watch these videos, thank you, because
good tip.
A month. But you also have to know how to interpret the data. That's the only thing, because it can get very overwhelming. But we're at about 3.1 for months of inventory right now. Yeah. And so what that means, and everybody knows that this is like my number one, like I love this number. If there were no other properties that were to hit the market, it would take about 3.1 months for everything to be gone.
So it's not a ton of inventory, but it looks like it's been coming up consistently.
It's not, but I think what's interesting about this graph is this is March 20th, or 2020, when you thought that you were going to go outside and you didn't want to look at people outside. And, this was peak COVID. And this is the closest we have been to peak COVID in a while from a market perspective, right? So the flip side to this, though, because if you were just to look at this solely, if you just looked at this number in a vacuum, you would be like, oh, it's a balanced market. It's not that bad. Yeah. It's not that bad. But then you look at sales to new listings. And so this is the newest listings that come to market and how many sales are happening in a month. Yeah. We're deep into a buyer's market when we look at that number, right? 41% of new listings are selling. Yeah.
So just new listings that are coming to market just aren't moving as much as they were 6 months ago.
Yeah. So again, this, you should know your specific neighborhood in depth. But when you pair these two things together, in the bulk of most neighborhoods, we're like pretty deep into a buyer's market. Okay. That's just what it is. If we start to see this turn back around, or we start to see this go up, then we know that the market's starting to level out a little bit more, right? Okay, so this has gone up a little bit over the last couple of months, but like nothing to like write home about.
Okay, so I'm a buyer. I'm buying my first property, or I'm upsizing in Toronto market. Yeah. What is maybe that one or two pieces of advice you're going to give them right off the bat?
Definitely talk to your mortgage broker. That's something we'll
Stop.
get into.
Look at me. Can we get a captain? What was it? Captain Phillips? Yeah. Can we get the Captain Phillips meme? Look at Emma right now. Look at me. Talk to your mortgage agent.
That is the number one thing. And then the second thing is, like you have to know. You need to know more information now than you knew at any other time that you were looking to buy or sell real estate, because the logistics of real estate is there's the fear of the market, right? Like there's some fearful elements that go into this whole process. It's like, I don't want to overpay, which we already talked about, right? And then also like, wow, selling my house and buying another house at the same, like that is enough analysis paralysis for people to be like, I'm just going to stay. I'm just not going to do anything because there's way too many moving parts. So working with somebody that specializes in those moving parts and understanding, do you need to buy first? Do you need to sell first, depending on where you're going, right? And in most scenarios, and this isn't to paint the whole market with a broad brush, but like you should probably sell your house before you buy something else now, right?
General rule of thumb. But again, like you said, you need to be working with somebody that understands both sides of the deal, as well as the logistics to get it done.
So what we'll usually do, because we're working with so many of these guys now, is before you put your house on the market just to sell it, we will usually go for a property tour where we'll show you like 5 to 6 houses, right? If there's 2 or 3 properties that are on the market and you're like, I actually really like these, I would be happy to live in any of these, then we know that there's enough inventory on the market that if you sold your house, we would feel comfortable finding you and confident finding you something that you'd be happy in, because there's no point of selling your house if you're just selling it to sell it to move somewhere else where you're not happy. Right. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest challenge right now is people are like, I don't want to sell my house first because then I'm committed to selling my house. And then I go and buy this house that I'm not really interested in. So what we like to do is kind of have this little bit of like a sandwich approach, right? Go see the properties. If you're so specific with your criteria that we're not sure that we're going to be able to replicate that again, then it becomes a more intricate conversation. But if you go and see 6 to 8 houses and you'd be willing to buy 2 or 3 of them, then there's enough inventory for us to confidently say you can sell and you can go buy something because there's enough stuff on this side of the transaction or this side of the equation.
For anybody that just listened to that, like go back and listen to it again. And please just, if you're doing a move in Toronto, just call Emma and her team. Please. That is the best piece of advice we've had a lot already, but I try to convince my clients to do the same thing. And most of them, obviously, some of them take you up on it. Some of them don't. Yeah. But understanding the potential market that you're going into as a buyer before you go gung ho and get your home up on the market, may just save you a lot of time and money and will give you more confidence as a buyer or somebody moving. Fantastic
100%.
piece of advice.
And I think people don't want to wait. I like actually really appreciate people because I think there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of time wasters. There's also a lot of people that are like overly respectful of your time. And they're like, I don't want to do this. And I'm like, hey, look, on my side, I don't want to be part of any transaction that you regret on the other side, right? I don't want you to be like, Emma convinced me. First of all, we're not here to convince you to do anything. We're here to be there when you're ready to do it, and we'll facilitate it and we'll consult with that. But I always want to make sure like you're going to be happier, right? Like you're actually going to be happier on this side of things, because if you're not going to be happier, I genuinely don't think you can do it. I don't want to be a part of anybody's unhappiness for us to get paid, because we do get paid doing this. But we've built our business off a lot of repeat and referrals. And we typically do that by doing right by people. So don't feel like you're wasting our time. We need to make sure that you're okay with the thing to make sure that you're happy with it.
Yeah. And a little bit of, like you said, that sandwich approach to understand really what you're getting into before you're like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
Such good piece of advice. That's amazing.
Cool.
And we got some more stuff to go through. So do we have more condo market, or are we getting that later?
We got a lot of condo market. I'm going to skip through to what I think are the key important things.
Okay.
So we talked about that sales to new listings ratio. And so what you can see is February, just to kind of give people perspective of what a hot market looks like. Because it's never going to be 100 and it's never going to be 0. But what is that threshold in that? Like what does that typically look like? So January, when the market was crazy hot.
Inventory was low everywhere, right?
Yeah, so we're looking and we're running between basically, like York was a little bit lower, but we'll say 60 to 70%. So you're hitting the market. The bulk of those are getting eaten up relatively quickly. So, 60 to 70% of the new listings we're selling.
And that's selling within 2 to 4 weeks?
Yeah, it's within under a month, I think is what it is.
Cool.
Right? And so now you look at it and we're running at like 36 to not even 50. Right. So that slowed down a lot. And I think it's really important to put that into perspective. And look, June was even worse. May was worse from a composite perspective. So we're starting to see this come up a little bit, but I think we're starting to see it come up a little bit because you actually had more inventory here, because you still had these people that signed contracts and there was going to be less. So now we have fewer competitors on the market, that kind of thing. So the newer stuff might be a little bit more of interest, but the numbers are just still not very good at the end of the day. It just is what it is. So what does this mean for sellers? You must stand out. Like you have to. You cannot have like, I think a lot of agents are cutting costs from like a marketing perspective right now, because they're like, well, I don't know if this thing's going to sell, so I don't want to like inject all this capital into advertising and marketing. And it's like, but if you don't, then you're very unlikely to sell anyways. So you really do have to have a good, like right now we are the most selective with taking listings, because I don't want to invest a bunch of money if my sellers are not going to be realistic, because it might be thousands of dollars that we have to invest in a listing. And if you're not going to actually sell it for the right price, I'm not going to put a bunch of money down with the hopes of getting it back. That's a terrible way to do business. That's just gambling at the end of the day. Right.
Yeah.
So you have to have realistic expectations. You are likely going to take longer to sell, and you better be, if you have 3 or 4 competitors, you better be 1 or 2. Do not be 3 or 4 in terms of, buyer's preference and the hierarchy of who stands out in today's market. Because if you're 3 or 4, you're probably just not going to sell.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a seller. I call your team up. What are the first 3 things that you guys are doing for people that are planning on selling their home?
So usually the first thing that we do is a listing preparation sheet. And so we do it like, if it's the equivalent of these numbers for individual people at the end of the day.
So you're taking everything in the market. I get your info from the property you're selling, and I put it specific to that property.
Yeah. So basically I have a spreadsheet, and I would take every single other competitor. So all of your recent comps, like we do like what I would call like a CMA on crack, basically. Right. So I have this massive spreadsheet. I have the subject property at the top. I have all of the different variables depending on whether you're a condo or a freehold. So I'll put, bedrooms, bathrooms, lot size. Do you have parking? Do you have a pool? You have all these things, right?
Yeah.
And then I list out all of your recent sold competitors and anybody that's on market. And then I do a weighted adjustment for each of the things. And I come out to like, this is like the most analytical, logical approach I can come to valuation for your property. Now let's pair on the emotional biases that buyers are going to have, blah, 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 all these things, right? So then people are usually like, what the heck? But then they can't argue with it because it's just based on facts at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you call me, we do that. We'll show you something called the net sheet, which is basically exactly how much money you should have after commissions, HST, legal fees, all that kind of stuff. We have like this calculator that we present. And then we go, this is what it is. These are all the costs that you have to take into consideration. We haven't really left anything out. This is how much money you're going to have at the end. Does that give you enough money to be able to do the next thing if we were to sell on the low end of the scale? And if the answer to that is no, then in today's market, you probably shouldn't sell because I can't guarantee you the high end of the scale.
Yeah.
We will do everything that we possibly can within our power to negotiate, market, do all that stuff to get you on the high end. But we will base all of our logic, reason, and expectations on the outcome on the low end so that we can crush it and hopefully get to the high end.
Yeah. So make your ideas and moves and next steps on the conservative side. And then if that all checks out, boom, we're good to go. Then we can talk moving forward.
And I'm a very conservative person. So most of the time, the outcome, again, it's like setting the right expectation and over delivering and not under delivering, right? Like,
well, yeah. What if you have clients that are making moves based on, somebody who's telling them they can sell the property at the prices back in, February, March, even, that's 200, 300, 400,000, depending on your market segment above what you're likely going to get. So
and
I
again,
think that's super practical.
We're not here to be people's best friends. Like, we love to be friends with our clients, but we're here to do a job first. Yeah. And once our job is done, then we can be friends.
Yeah.
Right?
Once you crush it, then we can be friends.
That's kind of like how I look at it. Like, people sometimes say like, hey, can I meet you for a beer? I'm like, no, I don't do that with clients. We can do that after. I'm 100% down to do that after, but let me do my job first. Yeah. Let me do a great job for you. And then we can do all of those things after. Right. So I'm conservative. I like to have a professional approach as chill as I am with a t-shirt and all that kind of stuff. Like, I actually care about this. Like, I'm really passionate about this stuff. So
I think it's pretty obvious from what we've gone through so far, but that's like super practical and honestly a ton of value for anybody considering selling a property. Could even be a good exercise for people that are even thinking ahead, saying, okay, well, Emma, hey, I want to see what the market's going to be like after the next interest rate hike, or, maybe kids are going to school, so I might be moving in the new year. What should I do between now and then? Could be a fantastic option to get in touch with you and your team.
Yeah, there's certain clients that I have. We have a running tally of like this CMA on crack with them, where we just like randomly will insert the new stuff and then update the price. So they just.
But now they're informed, right?
Yeah. But that is not for everyone. So unless you're a signed client, do not reach out to me and ask me to do the full presentation for you and keep a running tally. We'll do it if we're intending to list your property, but it's
just to be clear.
It's a lot of work. It's like hours and hours worth of work. So
well, you want to do it right. So what do we have here for months or the volume of sales here?
So July, we're talking the last 20 years, so 2002 to 2022.
Yeah.
July 2022 is the first month in the last 20 years where we had less than 5,000 sales. And so if you look, traditionally, we're like running at the volume that we typically would in a December or a January. So if you look at this to make things easy,
that makes
16 times out of 20 times, December or January has less than 5,000 sale.
Slower
One time out of 20, we have less than 5,000. So that should put things into perspective for like kind of the sentiment, like how the market kind of feels. It feels like Christmas.
Yeah.
Right now. Well, the volume feels like Christmas.
The volume feels like Christmas.
The presents are maybe not quite there, but that's kind of what it feels like if you're an agent in today's market, or if you're looking to sell your house, right? So just really important. And then if you look, April and May 2020, which we're here and here,
those are the only spring months ever, eh?
Yeah. So it's very atypical. But again, to my earlier point is we just don't have the volume that we usually have, right? Like I think we had 11,000. So if you have 11,000 transactions versus 4,900, which is what we had, then you have to understand like the prices could be skewed because you have 50% of the volume, which you just don't have as much data to run off. So it's just not as good at the end of the day. Like that's the easiest way I can put it.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is great for people who want a general idea, but honestly, anybody that's making that move in Toronto, like you got to take that next step.
Yeah. Totally. And then just before we wrap it up here, this is Treb, like this is everything together. This is the number. This is the one number that condenses all of the things. And we are looking at $1,075,000 is the average price for a composite, everything in Treb. And last year we were at July 2021, $1,062,000, and August 2021, $1,070,000. So we've basically reverted, and this doesn't take into consideration specifics. This is general, but we've reverted back about 1 year. All right. So if you bought before August 2021, you're still looking pretty good. If you bought after, it's okay. It'll come back. We just don't know when.
Yeah. And just to be clear, like these monthly changes are insane. Like a monthly price change of even 2.5%, let alone 6.2%.
Yeah.
Guys, like this is not necessarily normal stuff, even for Toronto. Like
no, I mean, you're looking at 7.5% average price growth in 1 month. Like,
that's a great year for crying out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. So, okay. Condo stuff we'll grab through quickly here.
Yes.
This is Orange is comprised primarily of downtown, and you'll see from a volume perspective, there was 963 sales, which is relatively low, but 639 of those were pretty much down here ish. Toronto West is purple. Toronto East is blue. Average price point for West is 665 ish. Central is just shy of 800, and East is 615. So we're kind of back. If anybody's watched my videos for the last little while, you saw that we were out of that equilibrium. We usually see Central, West, East have a very distinct differential in terms of price point. We're back to where we should be from a proportionate pricing between the three of them.
Okay.
Now, if we look at these 5 pockets are the most condo dense neighborhoods that you're likely to look for condos in. These little buckets here, right? So CO1, which I would consider like the AAA condo area of downtown, is here. There's definitely some great pockets in CO8, but it's still kind of like gentrifying a little bit more for more of these neighborhoods over here where condos are. So we're looking at average prices 808 over here, average price is 765 here. Where I think this is interesting and opportunities lie is you look over here, which is Mimico. You have more like you have like newer inventory typically here and whatnot, but the average price here is 750. The average price here is 765. So this is about an hour commute on transit and a 15-minute drive to get downtown. This is downtown and it's $15,000 more expensive. I'd probably just buy the thing downtown right now.
Does location matter in real estate, Emma?
No.
That sounds like a no-brainer.
One of the most important things. So yeah, I think there's not enough I don't think there's enough disparity from a pricing perspective right now. But the rents are still pretty good out here. So we'll talk about that in 1 second before we wrap up. And then here, you're looking at average price point of 607. This is still on the subway line to get downtown. Okay. Now, this area here is, I think, a little bit of a sleeper hit. A lot of people here, it's Scarborough Town Center. So a lot of people hear Scarborough, they're like, no dice, right? But if you looked at the rents and you looked at the purchase price, you would say, yes, dice.
Yes, dice.
Yeah. So that's what people usually say when we send them the numbers out here. And then CO7, which is here, and this is a direct shoot on the subway to get downtown, is about 710 or so. So you have to determine between, I would say this is probably option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4 is how people would kind of typically categorize them. I don't necessarily do the same thing, but that's like the general perception of the market. All right. So this is where things get interesting with the rentals. Every month I take this sample size. So 1 bedroom plus dens on the waterfront communities, they have to have balcony and parking, and they have to be over 500 square feet. That keeps the sample size pretty small. Like you'll see, like here's 110 and 83 for the count. So we try to keep it around that, right? This month we had a $70 average price increase. So we were at $26.68. We're at $27.38. We started the beginning of the year at like $2,200. Right. And so you go, cool. Average price goes up to $27.50 a month. And the prices have come down from $780 to like $650. So we're getting to this equilibrium where right now condo prices or condo investment, like the numbers, are actually even taking into consideration the interest rates, like some of the best I've seen. I've seen cash flow positive condos on the market, and like, don't write home about this. They're like $4, right? So they're basically break even, but they're not at a loss. Some of them, if you can get a good enough deal with rents, like, that area I was showing you, Scarborough Town Center, there's some places out there where you're buying at $580 and the rents are 2,900, right?
Wow.
2,900. So you and I had talked about the investment properties in Kitchener Waterloo, where it's like, 0.5% rule kind of thing, right?
Yep.
Like you're buying at 800, you're getting 4,000. Here, you're probably getting in and around that similar kind of threshold for certain areas, but you have maintenance fees which skew the numbers. So, but you don't have the traditional improvements that you would have with a home that are
Absolutely.
already being paid for. So you're taking that into consideration. So
And you don't have the
again,
location. You're in the
yeah,
big city, guys. Like,
totally. And you have great tenant profiles for a lot of the like great tenant profiles.
and
So
so question about
yeah,
the condo market.
yeah,
Can condo prices in Toronto, like say proper Toronto, can they
yeah.
continue to fall if rental rates are really coming up that aggressive? Because eventually you're going to get to a point where more condos offer potential positive cash flow or closer to it, which haven't been a thing in your market for a while.
Long time.
So assuming these trends continue,
Yeah.
can condo prices fall, or will
So
there be a point where they just won't?
I think the reason why we saw the slowest declines in the condo market is because, again, like I said before, it's kind of like you're getting squeezed, right? You're getting these people that are end users that were thinking about buying something that wasn't a condo. Now you have that demand pushing down into the condo market. Then you also have these rental prices, which are pushing up on the condo market, which kind of squeezes it to have a little bit more stability than we would otherwise have in different segments of the market. And so,
Interesting.
not every condo owner is going to have the appetite of renting out their condo. And some people, or maybe they're investors and they're like, hey, yeah, whatever. I'll take the 10% haircut and I'll buy the 25% discount thing. Right. So there's going to be some people that are still going to make these trades. But I do
Mhm.
think if we continue to see this trajectory of, and it's been between $70 to $100 a month for the last like 5 months. Right. So
Wow.
if we keep seeing this happen, then and prices come down, we are going to have to cross that threshold at some point. I just don't know. It's not going to last forever. Again, it might be a quick thing, right? Like if you're an investor, you should get prepared because if that happens, it's likely to happen in the next 3 months, probably, right? We see another $300 and this is 3,000, and then prices go down to 600. You're probably looking pretty good,
Wow.
right? So here's my thing. Key considerations that you guys need to, if you're a viewer, thank you for watching this far. We're pretty well over time, but we're going to wrap up here in 1 second. Your old pre-approval does not count. If you got pre-approved, 2 years to 3 months ago, the thing doesn't exist anymore. Talk to a broker again. You need to be in contact with your mortgage broker more than ever as things are changing. And you have the opportunity, if you were prepared, if you don't need a financing condition, if you know the building and you have the status certificate available, if your dad's a home inspector, if you are prepared and you're more prepared than other buyers in today's market who are skittish on certain things, you have the opportunity to disproportionately crush other people because everybody's conditional for 5 days on everything right now. Right. So if you want to save yourself some money and you do some research, I think that's the quickest, easiest way to get ahead. I'm not saying like put yourself at risk at any point, do all of the due diligence you want. And right now you will just have this similar view to the sellers that every other buyer will. So if you want to disproportionately get yourself ahead and you're good on your financing, you know the building, and or you can obtain the status certificate before somebody else, or you get a home inspection before you put in the offer and you don't need those conditions, you're providing certainty in an uncertain market to a seller. You are disproportionately more advantageous with your offer than anybody else is in today's market.
I think that's incredible advice and something that we've voiced to our clients as well.
Yeah. And then last thing is just about future rate hikes. So the reason why I made mention to this old pre-approval is outdated was because before this most previous rate hike of 1%, affordability did not change. You were still stress tested at the same rate, where now you are no longer stress tested at the same rate. So prices going down made a lot of sense to wait because your affordability would stay. But now you have three outcomes, I personally think. So if rate hikes continue, because a lot of people say this, well, I should just keep waiting for rates to go up because the prices are going to come down. And you're like, in theory, it makes sense, but there's three outcomes. So let's say a rate hike happens again. Okay, prices come down and your affordability also goes down as rates go up now. So they both go down together and they come down at the exact same amount at the exact same time. Therefore, you're no better or no worse. Your payments should essentially be the same. You can afford the same house that was $650 that came to $620 because you could afford $650 and now you can only afford $620. So it's the same thing, right? Number two, rates go up and prices come down quicker than your affordability. You would be in a better position. Okay. Three, rates go up. And I think the biggest risk is for people who are like entry-level condo buyers. You can afford $550. We start testing the bottom of the market because of rents and more demand.
Yeah.
Prices don't go down. Your affordability goes down as the rate hike goes up. And now you're in like, oh man, I missed my opportunity. I missed my window.
And the affordability conversation is real. And that's number one reason why you guys need to get in touch with your mortgage professionals. And then you need to get in touch with a team like Emma and her team that are actually thinking about these things. Because if you're not, you're reacting to the market instead of preparing for it. Really.
Yeah. So I think ultimately the synopsis and theory of this entire presentation is there's a hell of a lot more going on than what's going on in the headlines of prices are coming down. There's like 1,000 different factors that come into effect. So you really need to talk to somebody about your personal situation so that you can understand that, sales volume down by 40% does not mean the world's going to crash. It just means that it's a great headline to get you to click on the thing.
Yeah. So I think this is fantastic. Emma, how are the people going to get in touch with you again? If we are still listening or we're still watching, how are we getting, we're following you on Instagram, we're reaching out via email. What's the best way?
Pace of Base on Instagram is the best way. And again, if you want to get on either of those lists, the motivated seller or the condo investment of the week, email admin@monstera.ca and we'll get you added to those lists.
That is amazing. Everybody, if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. There is lots to comment on as well. I know Emma and her team are checking out the comments, and you can DM her comments as well on Instagram to get complete access. For everybody else, for more videos, subscribe to the Canadian Real Estate channel. My name is Zack Brittain from Fifth Street Real Estate. And that is our friend, our Toronto expert, Emma Pace. Thanks so much for checking the video. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.